According to the schedule here, the delivered price, payable in full on delivery, with no prior commitment required, and including all tooling and other overhead, is $20 million. Additional identical units on same schedule for $4 million each. That's a lot of money. My name is Long John. We call this the party line. We're around from midnight to 5:30, 6 mornings during the week. Monday mornings, we get started about 1. We continue through till 5:30. That means we're around for 37 and a half hours a week. Now, I imagine you're wondering what I'm talking about for $20 million. Well, I've had a few sponsors. We've sold a few things. But I don't have OTC Enterprises Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland as sponsors. But they do have something to sell. Namely, a circular foil spacecraft that is available for $20 million. We've talked about flying saucers on the program many times. And, of course, we've talked with people who claim that they've been to other planets, such as Venus, Mars. We've even had a man on the program that claims that he was on the moon during groundbreaking ceremonies, the day that they started to drill the hole, from the dark side to the light side of the moon. And we've had a lot of shall we say, interesting offbeat people. But tonight, it appears to me that we have two very, very solid citizens who represent OTC Enterprises, and according to all of the brochures, all of the booklets, everything that we have in front of us, and believe me, we got a stack of material in front of us, plus miniature working models. Well, with all of this material, I'm led to believe that evidently these men believe that there's something to flying saucers. And the men that I'm referring to, Otis T. Carr, President, and Norman Evans Colton, Director of Sales Engineering. These gentlemen are associated with OTC Enterprises. And we'll be talking with them tonight about the possibility of making a craft that can go to Venus, that can go to the moon, that can go to Mars. The cost, $20 million, and after we have the first one, well, the rest of them won't cost too much. They'll be about $4 million each. We have with us this morning Ben Iskowitz, the cybernetician, and Mel Shaloney, advertising executive. And we'll be doing a lot of talking this morning with a lot of people, and I hope that you might call some of your friends and neighbors and tell them that if they're interested in flying saucers, this is one night that they should be with us. Mr. Carr, some time ago, one of our listeners sent me a brochure that was published by OTC Enterprises. It's a very beautiful brochure. It's certainly a very inspiring one. And when I read this offer about a spacecraft that would be made available for $20 million, I nearly flipped. And I mentioned it on the air. And evidently somebody contacted your Director of Sales Engineering, Mr. Colton, and he contacted us, and that's why you're here this morning. Before we talk about the particular spacecraft that you intend to manufacture, I would like to ask you a couple of questions. One, do you believe in the possibility of flying saucers coming to this planet, the planet Earth, from other planets?
We believe that there are unidentified electrified objects in the air. We have seen 3 on 3 separate occasions.
When you say you've seen 3, Mr. Carr, did you see them in the air? Were they hovering above a particular place?
They were going at great velocity, and they were definitely electrified because we had been working on the same principle for many years, and we recognized what we saw.
Well, when you say electrified, what other type of, if we may use the word saucers this morning, because most of our listeners understand that, what other type of saucers could there be other than electrified? Would they be gas-driven or something, sir?
There could be if we follow principles now known within our atmosphere. There are many manners in which a circular craft could be used. such as the Hiller principle and jet on the areas of the close to the foil, the leading edge. But in the instance of those the three different ones which we saw in 1951 and 52 were definitely electrical, and they were very close to what we had already designed.
I think you said the Hillier system?
That's right. Any system of circular rotation that can use a motive power, such as jet propulsion, would make an airborne crash.
In what way is your invention different from the unidentified flying objects which you have seen?
Well, we do not, naturally, not having been able to examine the objects we saw due to their great velocity, we can't say with certainty that they are similar to ours, but the principle we feel is the same. Our design utilizes gravity, electromagnetism, and electromotive force in a relative field to get its functional operation.
I haven't understood a single word of your last sentence. Without getting, without getting it all technical,
Right.
Could you sort of make it a little bit easier?
We will use this statement that we use an electrified center. It's a center power core. Now, this is what we call an accumulator. In a vernacular sense, it is a battery. It is a storage cell, an accumulation of storage cells, which provide electromotive force in the same manner that any known battery produces electromotive force.
Is that what you're holding in your hand now?
That's right. This is what we're holding.
Could you
in our
describe it to the listening audience?
This is a dimensional product. It is designed with the dimensions of space itself in mind. And we say that it is truly the geometric form of space because it is completely round and completely square. Now, in this, surfaces are all round. But when we show it this way, the surfaces are square. It has been proven in a scientific laboratory that the very smallest units of matter ever photographed under an electron microscope are square in shape. This has only been found out within the past couple of months. We have known it for years and applied this principle into an electrified system. This is the center power core of our space vehicle. Now, what makes this different and unique and novel from a battery is the fact that this is a piece of moving machinery. It rotates. Our average storage battery is an inanimate object set in an inertial spot, and then the electromotive force is conducted by wires from this battery to animate some object.
Well, let me interrupt a moment, and I'll try to describe it further. Could you hand that to me, please?
Yes, indeed.
Well, it looks like two ice cream cones put together at the scoop end, but the angle is a lot wider than that of the ice cream cone. There are a series of ridges. They look like places for gears to fit in. Is that correct?
No, those are, in a sense, turbine principles. They're reactor channels. And where there is atmosphere, flow of air there aids in rotation.
Well, then this is one of the components of the drive. This is the battery.
This is the center power core.
This generates electricity?
This is right. This is a storage cell for electrical energy. In operation, it generates electricity. At the same time, it puts out electromotive force. This is the central power system for our spacecraft.
I just noticed that it opened up, and it appears to be hollowed out on the inside.
That is right.
Much, I would say, well, it's circular. The inside, when the two parts are put one on top of the other, and they fit in with two pegs, the cavity inside is circular. Is there any specific purpose for that?
It is a sphere, yes. And each unit is a hemisphere. We call the center of this, its largest dimension, the equator. And, of course, it expands or contracts and expands to a point on each side. It's the union of two fresco conical sections. That is what it is. Two right-angle sections. And we say that it is the dimensions of space, and we have shown how this comes about.
I'll leave the more technical aspects to Ben, whose background would fit him much better to ask these questions.
You're good to me.
I'm always good to you, Ben. I do see appearing in a Utica, New York newspaper dated Tuesday morning, October the 29th, 1957, an AP dispatch, a lengthy one, and there is one paragraph that says that you sent copies of your brochure outlining the system of propulsion that you have developed to President Eisenhower and members of the Cabinet and the Atomic Energy Commission. Have you received an answer from them?
There was recognition of receiving the material.
Beyond that, did they give any value judgment on what you have to contribute?
No, we have not received any value judgment.
Don't you think that's a little odd?
Yes, I do.
Is there any way that you could explain it?
I have my own ideas about this. Of course, no way to substantiate such ideas. If to give my own personal opinion, we have a truly a space vehicle that is not expendable. It does not burn up its energy in a few seconds. It carries the energy with it, and it can leave the Earth's atmosphere and return manned. It also can be used within the atmosphere, and it could make a trip from very easily as other aerial transportation systems from here to Baltimore or from here to the moon and return. Now, it is inexpensive. It certainly doesn't cost as much as the systems of one expendable rocket. The tooling is much less expensive, and whether or not our offers enter into an economic picture that is not feasible at this time, we don't know. This is one of our opinions of an answer.
Well, let me interrupt for just a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, and then we'll be back with Otis T. Carr and Norman Evans Colton of OTC Enterprises. And we're talking about a spacecraft that they are ready to produce for $20 million. In case you have that type of money, please call us immediately, and we'll all come over. I'll come over, too, to your house.
So that the party line gets the opportunity, on special occasions at least, to present visual experiences of this order.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm absolutely amazed. I know that when I arrived here about 11 o'clock tonight, I saw a tremendous amount of luggage and a lot of crates and things out in the hallway here, and I didn't know what happened. I thought maybe the good white father sold the station. You know, they were moving me out or something. And when I met the two gentlemen, Mr. Carr and Mr. Colton, and they said that this was their equipment, I had no idea what they had in mind. And it's very impressive, and I also share your thoughts about this, Mel. It is rather unfortunate that we're not in a position to have picture radio tonight so they could see what's happening. But I think that possibly maybe our good friends at Fate Magazine will be interested in doing something on this with some pictures, or Ray Palmer in Flying Saucer magazine, or maybe our good friend Herb Bailey with Argosy may be interested in doing a story with a number of pictures. I think that this is a real story, and I think what we're doing, we're passing up too much of the story by, talking between ourselves and saying what a great amount of equipment they have. I think we should get back and talk with Mr. Carr and Mr. Colton. Ben, you just don't seem to be in a happy mood.
No, we're very mood.
I know. Venusian, would you care to get in this? I think you have a couple of questions.
Mr. Carr, I was wondering, I've been glancing at the literature that you provided us with, and I've been going over it. And there's a mathematical formula that crops up here that intrigues me. It's -0 divided by +0 equals 0. Now, the first time I ever saw a -0 used in a mathematical equation was in the work of Pierre Qualet, who was the first mathematician ever to bring forth the idea of a -0, which was laughed at by most orthodox mathematicians. It also intrigues me further because the concept of -0 is used in computers, but used in a much different way. I wonder if you could tell me more about it and exactly how you stumbled upon this idea.
This equation is brought about by the shape of our neutron electrical accumulator.
What is that again? Neutron?
Neutron electrical accumulator. This is the name we give for the central power core system of our spacecraft. It is dimensional, as we have said. And in our operation of working models and in checkout of experiments, we had to find the formula that fit the reasons for the actions and the reactions that we were getting. So, exploring nature and studying somewhat of the inspirational work of the great Dr. Albert Einstein on relativity, we came upon this formula of linear correlations. And when we study linear correlations in geometric form, we have to have a starting point. And this is, in reality, a point. And from there, it expands into the cross, into the circle. And the mathematics, the only way we can express it is in the symbolism of 0x or OX. And this formula brings us to that. We claim that this is the true unified field theory in physical practice.
Well, the thing I wonder about, again, the first time I ever came across the concept of -0 was in looking over volume 4 of Pierre Qualet's work. Hitherto before, I never saw it. And I must admit, I had never conceived of any such idea. I was wondering how you had been led to arrive at it, because previous to this, I always conceived and had been taught to conceive of 0 as a no quantity with no sign. And when I saw the concept of -0 in Qualet's, by the way, are you familiar with Qualet's work?
No, we are not.
Well, when I saw the concept of -0 in Qualet's work, I didn't know quite what to make of it. I thought it was somehow a great idea, but somehow I didn't know how really to evaluate it. I wonder how actually you were led to arrive at this concept.
In a further study of Dr. Einstein's great inspirational work, and we corresponded with him, and we had the great good fortune to have been advised by him at one time. We learned that all measurements of time and space had to be considered in relationship to the observer. And therefore, there never was a fixed equation due to the observer being the, in a sense, as I understand it, which is satisfactory to me in the applications of my work, the observer himself is the somewhat the minus factor. And therefore, we cannot have any fixed quantity of any number due to the observer. Now, in physical form, this is something else again. And we worked for a considerable time with, and had many conferences with the great Nikola Tesla, and in his evaluations of the sine wave, electrical principles, wherein the true value of alternating current hydroelectric systems were developed by the great genius of this man. Further inspirations came to us, and finally, from this knowledge and from continuing to seek, we find this formula.
Did you find it, Mr. Paul?
Yes, we did.
No, it's the Jew. I mean,
That's
did
right.
a group of you work together?
No, I found it. With the assistance of Mr. Colton in evaluation. Mr. Colton researches very heavily in all the work that I do, and when we collaborate very closely. Also, Mrs. Shea collaborates with me in research.
Mr. Carr, when was OTC incorporated? What year, sir?
1955.
1955. And how long prior to the year of 1955 were you associated with Mrs. Shea and Mr. Colton?
Not before that. They've come with me since.
And prior to that time, then, prior to 1955, were you interested in this?
We started this development in I use the editorial we.
Mm-hmm.
I started this development in 1937. Our investigations begun in 1937. We were actively making models in 1938. By 1942, we come up with basic principles.
In other words, 18 years prior to this year, you had an idea in your mind, Mr. Carr, that possibly some type of craft could be developed that you could get into space with it. Is that right?
This is true.
Mm-hmm. Do you hope that this craft, if you are able to manufacture it, do you hope that you could go to any other planets with it?
We know we could.
You know you could.
We know.
What planet, for instance, do you think it would be capable of reaching?
Escaping from the immediate gravity pull of the Earth, plus the heavy atmosphere of the Earth, enables us, just as our satellites are doing now, explorers and the rest of Sputnik, to join a universal free energy system. They have a velocity now of 18,000 miles per hour, more or less, without the expenditure of any energy whatsoever. Now, any energy attached to these would immediately throw them into a higher velocity orbit, which would expand them farther into space. This is extremely easy to do. We feel that our craft will gradually escape and comfortably escape from the atmosphere of the Earth, and then we can handle velocities almost unimaginable in reaching other gravity systems. And the moon should not be more than 5 hours away.
5 hours away from Baltimore, Maryland.
That's right. That is right.
How many people can you take in this craft if you are able to?
The one that we have on our design board is 45 foot in diameter, and the cabin will accommodate 3 in total comfort.
In comfort.
People. That's right.
Mm-hmm. And what type of equipment do you hope to have on this spacecraft?
On this craft, insofar as the individual is concerned, they can travel the same as on a pressurized airliner or in a submarine. We don't have the problem of G-suits that are brought about by high velocities. We don't have the problem of thermal barriers, which are spoken about, because the electromagnetic system sets up a protective shield in our craft, which enables us to overcome these barriers without any discomfort to the occupants who are passengers and operators of the craft. And we can very slowly rise from the earth. And we can, once we are outside this atmosphere, accelerate the tremendous velocity of, with perfection in certain systems between planets up to near the velocity of light itself.
Mr. Carr, I'm interested in this very much so. In fact, we had something else planned for this morning for our discussion. And when we received the telegram about 1 or 2 o'clock yesterday morning from Mr. Colton, we immediately contacted you, and I'm very grateful that Mr. Colton was kind enough to arrange your appearance this morning. I am greatly interested, though, in the method of landing this craft if you were able to get to the moon. Well, let us forget about going to the moon a moment. If you take this craft up from this planet, from your airport in Baltimore, how does it land, sir?
Back in Baltimore?
Yes.
Very simply, we can rise at the very slow velocity of 100 feet a minute or less, and we can sit down as gently as a feather because we have joined. Part of the operation of our craft is joining the universal system. This is a relative velocity craft, and the minute it reaches the relative velocity of the attractive inertial mass, it becomes weightless as regards this inertial attraction. It does individually. It is not weightless. It has the same weight as before. But when it reaches a relative rotation, it becomes an independent system, just as a planet is an independent system.
Is there any gravitational pull at this point, sir?
None whatsoever.
What happens to the occupants of the spacecraft if there's no gravitational pull?
They are perfectly comfortable inside the craft.
Well, I mean, are their heads on the ceiling, or are
not
they
at all
lying on the wall, or what?
Not at all. They will have the same feeling of pressure of weight that they have right now, because we will maintain as near as possible the atmospheric pressure of the Earth at sea level with inside the cabin.
Well, this is very technical for me, Mr. Carr, so please accept my apologies for being rather stupid and ignorant in my line of questioning this morning. I am under the impression that the only reason I am able to sit in this chair at the present time and remain in this position is because of gravitational pull. Am I correct in assuming that?
This is WOR Radio, your station in New York, 710 on the dial.
Now, we have this at around 14 pounds to the square inch within our atmosphere.
Now, when you say we have this, what are you referring to, sir?
Well, I mean, right here
you mean
now.
like in this room?
That's
in this
right.
Studio, yes?
So, men have been able to be sealed off away from such a condition, and then artificially this atmospheric pressure, such as pressurizing the cabin, is maintained. We have it very well in submarines. The system, technically, that is used in a submarine is all that is necessary to be used in our craft.
Oh, in other words, undersea, where a submarine may be, there is no gravitational pull. Is that what you're saying?
There
sir?
is gravitational pull at all times, yes. But we're speaking about the atmosphere of the particular occupants inside a sealed unit.
Well, is that necessary to keep the occupants in the position that they desire?
This is
the atmospheric condition?
Absolutely, because in a vacuum, they are at the mercy of any velocity.
What would happen, sir, if you had some type of instrument that you could turn on at the present time to eliminate the gravitational pull that we assume is in this room? What would happen to me, sir?
Well, you would, in a sense, become very buoyant.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not in itself, it may be a novelty, but it certainly does not have any disastrous effects on people.
Would I still remain in this position?
You
sir?
could, but any movement could very quickly move you out of that position.
Would our pads of papers and pencils and the picture and thing and the mics remain in this position?
Until they were brought into any movement. Then any movement would immediately make them buoyant themselves.
Well, then let me ask you this, sir. I have an ordinary lead pencil in my hand now. If I hold this up in the air and if I release
the pressure of my fingers from the body of this pencil, the pencil will automatically fall to the table because of the gravitational pull, right?
This is true.
If we had this other condition that you so aptly described a moment ago, if I released my fingers from the body of this pencil, would the pencil remain in midair?
This is true. It would stay there.
I believe what you're saying, Mr. Carr, is that you would be creating an artificial gravitational system within the body of the spacecraft, and yet there would not be any gravity on the outside.
Exactly correct.
And this is done by, as I've been reading your material, this is done by the battery, which I've attempted to describe, spinning around, creating its own gravitational influence.
This is the beginning of an answer to the solution. We have capacitor plates and electromagnets as a part of this system. Now, this is counter-rotating. The electromagnets rotate in one direction, and the accumulator, the battery, rotates in another. The capacitor plates rotate in conjunction with the battery so that we have a clockwise and a counter-clockwise rotation. Now, the third system is the cabin that maintains the crew. This does not rotate. It is fixed due to the fact that the two bodies are rotating clockwise and counterclockwise as the accentuations of the cabin. Therefore, the system that causes the craft to become escape from the gravity pull, the craft itself, due to this system, still has internally gravity because it still has the same weight that it had in the beginning. It has not lost any weight.
What charges this battery?
This starts out electrochemically, the same as other batteries, but we do have a regenerative system that is very unique. We are able here, for the first time to our knowledge, to use atmospheric electricity as a recharging system. This is done as a part of the operational principle of the craft. Now, the capacitor plates...
Wait a minute, just a minute. You say you use atmospheric electricity.
That's right.
What happens when you leave the atmosphere and there isn't any atmosphere?
We have the electrochemical system then to provide us with all the energy that we need. And we have a regenerating system in a matter of regenerative coil that recharge this battery in the same manner in which your storage battery in your automobile is recharged now by a generator.
If I understand the implications of what you're saying, it would appear to me, and I must confess almost complete ignorance in this field, that what you have done is made the first perpetual motion machine.
There's nothing perpetual about our machine. The energies that cause it to operate are perpetual. You cannot destroy matter. You cannot destroy energy. Molecular flow is perpetual, and it has been proven. In the laboratory, they have proven that the electricity itself is immortal. When we take away resistance, you can set up a spark of electricity, and it will continue to operate. Therefore, we have perpetual energies. No machine that we can conceive of made by man would be perpetual. But it is free energy. It is self-energizing. And as long as all parts function and do not wear out, this is truly a self-energizing machine.
Well, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. I certainly, again, repeat the statement that was just made by Mel Chaloni, that it is very unfortunate that we are not in a position to show you some of the models that we have here this morning. And I will try, and I know that Ben Iskowitz and Mel Chaloni will also try to describe some of these models. In other words, we have them right here this morning. We're talking this morning with Otis T. Carr, president of OTC Enterprises Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland, and Norman Evans Colton, director of sales engineering.
My other guest this morning, Ben Iskwith, the cybernetician, and we have Mel Shaloney, advertising executive, with us. We have talked many, many times on these mics, across these mics, with many people who claim they've been to Venus and to a lot of other places, and a lot of people have told us about flying saucers arriving here from other planets. I can only tell you this, that this morning we have actual models of what Mr. Carr described as spacecraft that he claims can reach the moon in 5 hours. And, say, would you like to have one? Because on this deal, the delivered price, payable in full on delivery, with no prior commitment required, and including all tooling and other overhead, $20 million. And when you own one of those, 5 hours from the time that it's delivered to you in Baltimore, Maryland, you'll be up on the moon. And in case you go there, don't forget, send me a postcard, will you? Mel Shaloney. Or Ben Iskwith, I'm sorry.
Mr. Carr, I'm going over this again, and I'm intrigued by the mathematics of it. And I don't quite understand it. I don't know whether in deriving these formulas you were using the methods of conventional algebraic methods. But you have here one expression, minus x divided by plus x equals x. Now, I would normally say that minus x divided by plus x equals minus 1. Because according to algebraic conventions, any number divided by itself equals 1. And any time you go through a division with unequal signs, the quotient is a minus value. Now, were you using conventional algebraic methods?
No, we weren't. Partly conventional. But we were joining actual space form and dimensions, which is, as seen there, geometry, along with algebra, to arrive at a satisfactory equation for ourselves, which can be demonstrated in the physical form. We do not pose as a complete mathematician, but this has been the satisfactory formula which has brought functional application.
But aren't the physical laws that upon which your inventions work, aren't they expressible in mathematical terms?
Possibly. But I wouldn't say that I'm qualified. I'm very satisfied with this formula.
Well, it puzzles me. It's like saying that minus 4 divided by plus 4 equals 4.
Sometimes these solutions are not always what they appear. As we know, in one instance, that 1 plus 1 can equal 3.
1 plus 1 can equal 3?
Sure.
When?
Well, because two conditions always produce a third.
That's right. The third condition is 2, isn't it?
Not necessarily. It's another sum.
Could you go over some of these conditions when this would produce 3?
Well, if one condition operates one way, another condition operates another way, and when they're joined, then you have another condition, the sum is 3.
Well, that's a little bit over my head. I've been looking at this prototype you have here, and I noticed that within a small wooden frame or scaffolding, you have a larger model of the double cone that we have here on the table, and around it is a wooden ring, and there seem to be coils of wire with what looks to me to be electromagnets. Now, is that what they are?
That's right. This is a wood mock-up of a functional operational model. Incidentally, this model has been built, it has been activated, and it has checked out. What we have here, the central section is the cones. That is our Yukon electrical accumulator. That is the power system. This system activates these electromagnets and in turn activates...
The thing inside activates the electromagnets on the outside?
This is true, yes. Now, we do this by contacting this lead wires from the positive and negative poles of this battery to the electromagnets, and then we have circuit breakers from these electromagnets, and we have counter rotation. This magnets will rotate, in this instance, counterclockwise, while the internal area is rotating clockwise.
Well, are the coils of wire on the model itself, are they magnetized also?
Oh, the coils of wire...
I mean, inside the ring.
Well, now these, inside the ring, these coils are regenerative coils. They are electromotive force coils. And they assist in regenerating the battery because they are loops of wire conducted, brought through a magnetic field which sets up an electromotive force. These others are capacitor plates, and these are also activated by the central power core. But these capacitor plates, which can accept a very high charge through mutual conductance, also through the process of ionization, utilize atmospheric electricity.
Well, the fact that you're putting capacitor plates on the outside flanges of the thing, doesn't this ruin the fact that you have two cones superimposed on their meeting at their bases?
No.
So that you have something that is also square? I mean, if you turn that thing, you've tilted that thing, which I can do with this smaller model, I can get a square, but I don't see how you could with that.
Well, dimensionally it is. It is square in these dimensions. And when this rotation starts and builds up to a certain velocity, this form is very important because we have the total equation of action and reaction. Now, this is done by a system of coil winding wherein we start at a point and expand to an equator, and from the equator we continue our winding down to a point. This is physical expansion and contraction in an electromagnetic field. The gravity enters the picture in the form of this relative rotation. When the relative rotation of any inertial attractive mass is a matter of dimension. So that the Earth, if we say that it is 8,000 miles in diameter, we know its fixed rotation is 1 in 24. If it were 1 mile in diameter, its rotation would be 8,000 in 24. And by the same system, our 45-foot craft will have a relative rotation of about 580 RPMs a minute. And in this, when it reaches this rotation, it is totally independent of its inertial attractive mass in an electromagnetic field.
580 RPMs a minute? That's not very fast, is it?
Well, if you saw a merry-go-round going 580 RPMs a minute, that would be quite fast.
Well,
this is relative.
What about these, I think it's quite within my capacity to take these small models you have here and to spin it at 500 or even more, 580 RPMs a minute. Will they take off?
This model was spun at 40,000 RPMs a minute.
Continue.
And when it did, it set up a pressure pattern equivalent to 1,000 tons. It exploded. The horsepower rating was around a little over 700. 6 engineers checked this out. Now, the relative rotation of this model would be about 58,000 RPMs a minute. And when it reached that rotation, it would immediately take off.
Well, Mr. Carr, I'm sorry to interrupt at this time, but we're going to have to take care of a little business.
Otis T. Carr, President, and Norman Evans Colton, Director of Sales Engineering. I might also add that Sam Vanderbilt, the photographer who took all of the pictures that are appearing in the current edition of Argosy magazine dated April, the story about the party line with photographs of many of the people that we've had on the party line. Sam is here with us this morning, and he's taking some pictures of the various models that Mr. Carr and Mr. Colton brought with them from Baltimore. And no doubt these pictures will be seen in some national publication in the near future, at which time I will certainly call it to your attention. We're talking about the OTCX-1 circular foil spacecraft. This is a craft described by Mr. Carr, and he tells us that when it is completed, you can go to the moon in just 5 hours. Of course, my next question automatically would be, who wants to go to the moon? But I guess there's possibly something there that would be of interest to somebody. And we'll sort of start this segment with this telegram from Gloria Charles of New York. Dear Long John, please ask Otis Carr this. Would the time factor be involved with his craft? Sincerely, Gloria Charles.
In our system, in the solar system, the time factor would be involved, yes, within our own system. We evaluate time on the velocity of light, and in certain systems, if we exceed the velocity of light, unquestionably time would slow up, just as it's also...
Wait, excuse me, Mr. Carr. Your craft can exceed the velocity of light?
We don't say this. We say in other systems.
I thought nothing could be. I thought that was a constant factor in the universe.
Not necessarily. We do not believe it, so.
Well, this is one of Einstein's constants.
We don't believe that it is totally constant. Possibly in our system, in our solar system, it's not necessarily true in other systems.
Einstein's rule was that in all systems, the speed of light is the limiting velocity in the universe. If anything approaches the speed of light, it becomes pure energy.
Pure energy. But in other systems, it could change.
Well, what other systems?
Other solar systems. We are completely controlled by our own system and our own sun. And unquestionably, the velocity of light here is our yardstick and our pattern. Our craft is designed around it.
Are you speechless at the moment, sir? No?
Yeah, I am going to go home and take the books off the shelf and throw them out, because I can't conceive of it. I mean...
well, isn't it possible, Ben, as time goes along, don't you find that every day you learn something that possibly yesterday you were not familiar with?
That is true in some cases, but you just don't suddenly upset one of the basic fundaments of the universe, namely that the speed of light is a constant in the universe beyond which nothing can exceed its velocity.
Ben, I'm glad that you're more or less speechless at the moment, because it gives me an opportunity...
You better get away from me, because it might be catching.
It gives me an opportunity to get in a word edgewise, which has been rather difficult up until now.
I want everyone to know that Dave Bell and I are really friends.
Yes. Ben, how are you able to make statements about the speed of light in other solar systems?
I'm not making statements about the speed of light. I'm making statements about Einstein's theory of relativity, which states that he takes as a fundamental axiom that the speed of light is constant in all systems.
Doesn't Mr. Einstein say that it is relative? Dr. Einstein, I'm sorry. Doesn't he say that any measurement is relative to other measurements?
That's quite true, except this one.
Except this one.
That's the first axiom. In fact, that's the first axiom upon that, and another axiom is the whole basis upon which the theory of relativity is based upon. I mean, you've read it, haven't you, Dave?
Yes, I have, Ben. What is an axiom?
An axiom is a self-evident truth.
This is assumed
to be... the things you come out with on the program occasionally.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Ben. Dr. Einstein was assuming that this constancy of the speed of light was a self-evident truth. Isn't this correct?
He wasn't assuming it. You don't assume it. In fact, one of his quotations was that I take this as the fundamental rock upon which I build the entire theory.
Ben,
This is not an assumption. It's kind of strong to be an assumption.
does the speed of light depend to any extent on the density of the medium through which it's passing?
No.
It doesn't. Can you explain refraction?
That's something entirely different.
It has nothing to do with light?
It has nothing to do with the speed of light. It has to do with the direction of light.
Then why is it that a light beam is bent when it passes at an angle other than 90 degrees from a medium of one density into a medium of another density?
It's being bent. It's not being slowed down.
How is it bent?
My specialty was not optics. It is being bent. It is not being slowed down. Now, I will refer you to a simple little experiment conducted by two men called Michelson and Morley. The speed of light is constant. The medium through which it travels has nothing to do with its speed, namely the atmosphere of the Earth, the emptiness of space, or anything else.
Messrs. Michelson and Morley had...
Doctors Michelson and Morley.
Doctors Michelson and Morley had very little opportunity to test out their theory in the emptiness of space, did they?
Why didn't they? Light travels through the emptiness of space.
The experiment was done by means of some rotating discs with slits in them.
They were done with flashlights, too.
Yes. Well, the Michelson-Morley experiment was
They've
done...
since been done with light from the sun. The Michelson-Morley experiment has been duplicated countless of times with light from the sun, which I assume travels through empty space. Unless you still believe in the universal ether theory.
But without one of the discs being located at the sun, both of the discs were located on the Earth.
That's right. Both of the discs were located on the sun and on the Earth in the original Michelson-Morley experiment. Since then, the Michelson-Morley experiment has been repeated using the light from the sun.
Well, if I may interrupt a moment, Dave, the statement that was made by our guest, Mr. Carr, I was just wondering, do you disagree with the possibility of it?
Well, John, I have no way of really determining what happens to an object when it approaches or exceeds the speed of light. I do know that Einstein's theory of relativity says that the mass increases as it approaches the speed of light. The longitudinal dimension decreases, approaching zero, and that when it has approached the speed of light, that it becomes pure energy. Now,
You disagree then with the theory that Mr. Carr has expounded here this morning for the principle of this spacecraft?
Well, John, I don't think that I'm able to, because I couldn't even agree or disagree with Dr. Einstein. I'm a little too stupid.
I'd like to put a word in at this point.
Mr. Colton, please.
Ask for a definition. I think in talking about the speed of light and thinking of that speed in terms of 186,000 miles a second, we're getting a little bit mixed up with the wave velocity of light. And remember that the equation is speed of light squared, which in my poor mathematics would be something around 3 trillion miles a second.
No, that's not it at all.
Do you disagree, Ben?
No,
Light is traveling at a forward velocity in a wave motion, and so that the total velocity is far in excess of 186,000 miles a second.
No, you are perhaps thinking of the famous formula E equals mc squared, which is not a measurement of the speed of light. It's the expression of how much energy is released by matter being changed into energy. The energy resulting from a certain measurement of matter, the energy that resulting from this unit of matter is times the matter times the square of the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles.
Well, I'm glad I qualified my mathematics, because I think we do accept that the light traveling in a forward direction or in a straight line direction is traveling in
a wave motion. So that if it's forward direction...
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it is. I mean, I can introduce you to 20 physicists who say waves, and others will say photons, and I can even get 3 or 4 who say it travels in wavicles.
May I...
Mr. Carr, please.
Intercede here to state that Professor Pickard has the famous stratosphere balloonist has often evaluated the slowing up of time. And his comparison of this is that a space voyager could, in a relatively short time for himself, travel into galaxies far beyond our own, providing his craft had such velocities to so do. And then return to his point of beginning, in this instance, if we say it with the planet Earth, and find that 2,000 years had elapsed, and not even any of his progeny or children or so forth were even survival. Now, this is thinking men who have come up with these evaluations. We not pose here...
This is quite true. This is part of Einstein's theory.
But this definitely, in my mind, changes the velocity pictures. And this, if you change time, you must change the velocity of light.
Well, if you accept Einstein's dicta that time slows down as as a system approaches the speed of light, and that's exactly what he said, approaches the speed of light, which has been experimentally proved in the Bell telephone laboratories, that when particles approach the speed of light, time does slow down. Now, this is quite true. If you accept that part of Einstein's theory, I mean, I don't understand why you don't accept the original hypothesis upon which the entire structure was built, namely that the speed of light is a constant in all systems.
Maybe we're a little radical in our thinking. However, we must get back to what has been accomplished. We have invented an electrified system which makes it possible for a propulsion system to be put into operation to carry human beings with a fuel system that is not expendable and take them into space and bring them back in return. And this craft could, if I had the tools now, and those tools are available in large plants, and if one was available to me, we could have this craft on the moon within 6 months from this date.
Mr. Carr, on this sheet that I have in front of me, the sheet that is headed with these words, performance characteristic and delivery terms for the OTC-X1 circular foil spacecraft, I notice in the paragraph headed physical component that you mention in here, safety under normal conditions to be anticipated in flight, to be to within 1,000 miles away from Earth. Now, maybe I'm not reading this correctly, sir, but the way I read this, I am assuming that at the present time you feel that the OTC-X1 craft could go a distance of 1,000 miles away from Earth, and yet just a few minutes ago you told us that you could go to the moon in 5 hours.
This is true. The same craft. This, after all, this was a contract form, and we have not been to the moon. We're going to enjoy looking at the Earth 1,000 miles out, and I think this would be satisfactory if we made a safe return.
From a distance of 1,000 miles.
That's right.
Yes, John, the 1,000-mile figure was picked as an arbitrary figure for demonstration purposes only. That before we delivered the craft, we would give it a shakedown cruise and take it approximately 1,000 miles out from
before you deliver it to the purchaser.
That's right.
Then let me ask you this, Mr. Colton. How long would it take you to go 1,000 miles away from the Earth and return, providing that you don't hover around some 1,000 miles away from the Earth?
Well, it could be done in a matter of minutes. It would probably, because of the takeoff and landing practicalities, could be done comfortably in the space of an hour.
An hour?
1 hour.
It could be done comfortably.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
To avoid
awkward velocities, any discomfort to the...
Well, then, in other words, the possibility of going to the moon in 5 hours is a dream at the moment, right?
No, I wouldn't say it's a dream.
Well, if it takes you an hour to go out
Earth,
1,000 miles, to go 1,000 miles from the Earth and return, if it takes you an hour, it should take you a little longer than 5 to go to the moon, unless you've got an indirect route that will save you a little time.
You think of it in terms of a passenger train leaving the station and arriving at another station, or an aircraft in its travel between cities. The disproportionate amount of time it takes in the takeoff and approach and landing. The distance of approximately 60 miles in the heavy atmosphere would be negotiated rather slowly, relatively slowly. Once out of that atmosphere, as Mr. Carr said, almost any speed is hypothetically possible, up to approaching the speed of light. So you wouldn't approach any such speed because you would have accomplished your 1,000 miles in the wink of an eye. That's why I say that these figures are just rounded off and are selected arbitrarily for discussion and for preparing these contract proposals.
Mr. Colton, $20 million sounds like a lot of money. That is, if you were intending to buy a pound of jelly beans with it. It would be a classical amount of money. But $20 million doesn't sound like a lot of money to me if you could produce the craft that you have described this morning and the craft that's described in the various brochures that you've given us. Do you have any idea in your mind why some of our big aeronautical concerns, Fairchild, Lockheed, I don't know the names of all of them, but there are certainly numerous ones, why is it that they haven't taken advantage of this opportunity to invest some $20 million? And it's quite possible that it wouldn't cost them $20 million if they have some of the equipment, as Mr. Carr has suggested. There are some tools that are available in other plants.
Up to the present time, perhaps the total and very simple answer is that we haven't approached them directly with an offer to fabricate craft for them. We haven't offered to sell them anything yet.
Well, you have, you were incorporated in 55, right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And I imagine that you have made some efforts to get some money to be able to build your plant?
Yes, our only formal proposals to construct these craft up to the present time have all been directed to government agencies.
In other words, this particular sheet that I have in front of me with this offer, such as the performance factor, the physical component, and the delivered price and the delivery and so forth and so on, this is offered only to the government?
Up to this time, it has been offered only to the government.
When you say up to this time, do you mean up to the year 58?
Yes.
Is there any reason why the offer was limited to only the government?
I would sum it all up and use the word patriotic. It was offered only to the government up to the present time because we felt that the first opportunity for the use of these craft should be given to the government, to its various agencies. And I don't mean to limit that to military agencies. These offers were made to the Secretary of Commerce and to the Secretary of Interior, and they would be freely projected to any of the other official agencies that might have use for these craft or for these propulsion systems or the energy systems.
Is that what you're selling, a propulsion system, an energy system, or are you selling a spacecraft?
Well, we've been talking about spacecraft exclusively tonight so far, but this same power package, which will energize and propel a circular foil spacecraft, can also produce electric current or mechanical motion through gears and pulleys and conventional motion arrangements.
Do you think that the government would frown on any private group raising $20 million to build a craft that they could go to the moon? Or do you think our government would
want to have some control over it, that they would have the first rights to, or at least the rights to decide who the occupants would be of the spacecraft?
No, I don't think that anyone would want to be restrictive of what we have characterized in our published advertisements as peaceful atomic energy and a new electrical age. The system that you see here in mock-up prototype is capable of energizing almost any device that today is energized by some other system or using some fuel other than the electromagnetic energies that we call space forces, the forces of gravity and magnetism.
Mr. Colton, you just made a remark a couple of minutes ago that you have never offered this plan, this proposition to any aeronautical companies, right?
That is correct. Not in a formal manner.
In a formal manner. I would assume, though, that almost all of the large aircraft companies must be aware of OTC. The fact that I do a little bit for 5.5 hours on radio at night, and if I'm aware of OTC Enterprises, I imagine that some of the men over at Fairchild and Lockheed and Wright and places like that must have heard of OTC Enterprises.
Well, I would say, frankly, that I know that some have, and when I use terms like formally and officially, I'm not trying to be devious. It's that our visits from aircraft people so far have been informal and exploratory visits from employees who spoke only for themselves. We've had a lot of mail from employees of aircraft manufacturing companies.
But not from the principals?
Not from the principals.
Isn't that a little shocking, sir?
Well, I prefer not to characterize it. I don't know what the reason might be, really.
Do you think that we're being kidded by our government, or do you really believe that the government is interested in getting to the moon? And if you've got a piece of equipment here that can be manufactured for a small amount of money, like $20 million, which is a drop in the bucket in my book, and that you can go to the moon in 5 hours, what are they playing for down at Cape Canaveral? What's all this time being wasted? I mean, if you really have it, Mr. Colton. I don't know. In other words, I see a mock-up here, and it's an interesting gadget, to say the least, and I've seen your brochures, and they're very attractive. They're mouth-watering, to say the least.
I agree with you, and my answer to that would be only opinion and would be purely conjectural. I can tell you that we have, in conjunction with the specification sheet that you've been reading from, with an opening and closing paragraph, made it clear, and also in conversations with the principals of some of these agencies, made it clear that if they will write out an order to take delivery of a satisfactorily demonstrated full-scale craft at a COD price of $20 million, before we attempt to perform on that order, or before we even pick up the order, we will manufacture and demonstrate a miniature prototype model of, say, 10-foot diameter to prove that our statements are correct and that we can do what we say we will do.
My guest this morning, Otis P. Carr, president of OTC Enterprises Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland, and Norman Evans Colton, director of sales engineering of OTC Enterprises. Ben Iskwith is with us, Dave Bell, Mel Shaloni, and I had another mic set up. Believe me, I mentioned earlier, I said 9 chances out of 10. When Roy is finished with his last performance, he possibly wants... You want to join for a moment, Roy? Grab a seat. While Roy Benson, the boy comic, is joining us, I want to put this... you want to connect that for me there, please? Thank you. Roy Benson is with us. Stopped over after playing a little club date in Max's Busy Bee, or been working in one of the better spots?
No, it was a telecast. It was a telecast.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Jack Parr show.
Oh, were you on tonight?
Yeah.
I didn't. I thought I was kidding you for a moment. I didn't know you were over on this part. I thought you were during the week.
Well, I had to pitch some Svengalis on 40th Street. This is a very interesting-looking model here, you know?
Isn't it a fascinating thing?
When do we take off?
Well, now, this thing, you know, will take you right to the moon. Not this one. I mean, this is a mock-up. Will take you to the moon in 5 hours. I'd like to just give you a few facts about this. The performance factors. OTC Enterprises Incorporated will demonstrate that the OTC X-1 craft will depart from any specified location in the continental United States, orbit one or more times outside the Earth's atmosphere, and land its crew safely within the inner rotunda courtyard of the Pentagon building in Washington or at any other location best suited to public observation.
Very nice, this thing. What are these coils around the edge? I noticed some wound
Tell
coils.
you what, Roy, would you care to take a moment to describe to our listeners? Wait a minute, let me find out one. Al, is he on mic all right? Roy? Fine.
Well, I'll do
You want to describe
yes,
this?
I'll do the best I can. Now, this is, to describe this thing as best I can, imagine, if you will, a circle about, 16, 17, 18 inches in diameter. Two circles that sort of form, sort of a colonnade. In other words, one circle thing over another circle thing. And then, from the top of the circle and coming down from the bottom of the circle are two cones. In other words, one is up like a round pyramid, and the other one's like an inverted round pyramid. There are a number of what appear to be copper-wound coils around the edge of it. If you looked at it head-on, it would look like an old-fashioned airplane engine, more or less. And then there's sort of a framework on the top, and underneath there are sort of braces. I can't find the tweeter on it, but that's about the general idea. And, I noticed these cones that are placed mouth to mouth, with some coils, and what appear to be on the edge, the coils are on the edge of the thing. It revolves within this structure. That's the only way I can describe it. It's a tough thing to describe, actually, I think. If I had BCA training, I could probably do much better.
That's my problem, too. I haven't got BCA training. Well, now, what is this one, Mr. Colton, that you have over here?
Well, this is a paper mock-up to show the counter-rotation principle, and this outside circular section is the section that Roy is describing, looking at the other exposed mock-up, which contains the electrified horseshoe magnets. And this would rotate in one direction, counterclockwise, while the center section with the Neutron electrical accumulator, which is described as the two inverted cones mouth to mouth, would rotate clockwise in the other direction.
Well, in other words, would these coils be in this part of this?
In the outer ring. Rotating counterclockwise. That's correct.
What is this material that is used in the construction of it? I don't mean the mock-up, but in the actual spacecraft.
A number of materials would be used.
No, I mean, would this be aluminum, say?
Possibly aluminum, possibly fiberglass. Certainly not any materials or metals or products that are not known to us as conventional products and easily available for conventional manufacture.
Mr. Pilgrim, at what speed would this have to rotate on the Earth in order to overcome the force of gravitation?
I'm glad you asked that because in discussing this subject of space and spacecraft and space flight, we have been conditioned to regard it as dealing with space outside of the Earth's atmosphere. And of course, the craft that OTC Enterprises will manufacture are highly functional in the atmosphere and can take crew and passengers and supplies and equipment as easily from New York to Washington as from New York to the moon. In proximity to the Earth, which we discussed as being attractive gravitational mass, because we could also be discussing proximity to the moon, where the rotation would be relatively different for similar speed functions. In proximity to the Earth, our crest, as specified in the sheet John's been reading from, which would be about a 45-foot diameter crest, would have a threshold rotational speed to equal, relatively equal the Earth's rotational speed of about 580 revolutions a minute.
This is 710 on the dial. WOR Radio, New York City.
Which, as we described it in the vernacular, gives the crest relative weightlessness.
When you say 580 RPM, do you mean that the outer ring is rotating in one direction, 580 RPM, and the inner cone is rotating in the other direction at the same speed, giving a total rotation of one relative to the other of 1160?
You have it exactly. Although I don't know that the 1160 has any bearing on the matter.
Well, it would be twice the rotation with reference to the Earth.
What we're achieving there is we're not shooting for a certain rotation for the sake of rotation, but for the sake of relativity to the attractive mass. The Earth at 8,000 miles diameter, rotating once in 24 hours, is relatively equal to a 45-foot craft rotating at 580. And for a better idea for the listeners as to what would be analogous to this 580, we calculated to be the approximate rotational speed of an automobile tire on a car moving at about 25 to 30 miles an hour, depending on the diameter of the tire.
There was a thought that occurred to me, Mike, a description, a brief description of this device, this machine, as seen from the outside. I was attempting to describe the inside of the mechanism, which was very difficult, but I think I could describe it this way, if I may, to the audience. Imagine taking a couple of loudspeaker cones and putting them mouth to mouth. Now, that seems to be the body of the craft as you would see it in flight or, well, let's say landing. Now, around this is an independent ring. Running through from the top to the bottom is an axis, and the axis is braced to the ring, so that these two mouth-to-mouth speaker cones revolve inside the ring and on its axis. Am I correct, or fairly correct in that description? Just to give them a picture.
It's a very good picture.
Just a rough idea.
In its totality, of course, it looks like what is commonly described as a flying saucer.
Yes. Sort of in a way, it's like a flying saucer. It sort of reminds me of a gyroscope.
That is a good analogy, too. This craft, among other things, has tremendous structural stability because all of its motion is around its own central axis, so that it would be completely vibrationless, and it would not have the stresses and strains of other types of moving vehicles that we're acquainted with.
Well, I missed, unfortunately, part of the show. Have you described the basic principle of the thing?
Yes, Mr. Carr described the basic principle and the relationships of electricity and electromagnetism and electromotive force and mechanical motion as they are employed in the assembly of units that you were describing in the other wooden mock-up.
Well, could a let's say, a small craft be made to take off at least? In other words, could this thing be made at this time on a small scale and made to take off as an experiment?
Mr. Carr has estimated that...
Please do it.
We plan to build a prototype model as a demonstration device. Now, I would like to state that 6 operational models have been built by me and tested. Each one became airborne. One was lost entirely. It escaped. We had the control system, and this one didn't function. This has already been done.
I see. Years ago, a man showed me just two cross pieces. This is no relation to Homer Boomer. They were two pieces of balsa wood curved slightly upwards. He used to steam them. Steam these two, and just like an X shape, and connected with an ordinary rubber band, and he would spin them. Now, this is when I was a kid. You know how long ago that was. And as he would spin this thing would take off and go very nicely, and then just gently descend to the ground. And so it's not surprising to me that a thing like this is quite feasible. As a matter of fact, look at the fantastic flying platform. I think the Navy had something to do with the development of that.
What you just described is the principle that he was confident.
Yeah. You mean well, he said that someday this is going to be an important way of flying instead of the prop in the front. He was right about the helicopter. Okay. Now, the platform, how does that work? And if you've been kind enough to tell us, if you will, how does it differ from this particular flying saucer? That's what it really is. In principle, in other words, in motivation.
The flying platform will, I believe that's the combination of a propeller and a jet, both directing an airstream downward. This doesn't have an airfoil that I've been able to find.
None whatsoever.
I just calculated that the speed of the circumference is 1,363 miles per hour. You get kind of warm at that, won't it? From the atmosphere?
No, it won't, because it has its own protectional shield, which is its electromagnetic activation. This we describe in vernacular sense, such as it's a self-contained unit, same as an orange, contains the juice within its skin, same as we maintain our own circulatory system, mammals and animals and so forth. In the same sense, this ionization of these capacitive plates sets up a glow. And incidentally, this craft will glow very brilliantly with a very soft luminescent light.
What color?
It would be in the nature of blue-green or very similar to the electric arc that you see in welding.
Sort of a cold, I know what color, I think I know it.
And this is the shield of protection, so that we do not have a heat barrier here in forward velocity at all. Now, this electromagnetic shield is being tested out now in conventional aircraft, including very effective. But we have known that this functions for a long time in our particular operations. We found it out by physical, actual tests.
Have you patented this?
We have patent applications in preparation and on file.
I see. I mean, I personally, this is only one man's opinion, I'm very reluctant to try to argue with you about this device or take umbrage or anything like that because of the fact that this looks like a very definite look into the future. And I'm inclined to call it a flying saucer. And at the same time, personally, I'm reluctant to lend credence to the contact stories that I have heard. I'm afraid to say I just don't seem to take them too seriously. I can't. They don't seem to have much substance. Do you think that there are flying saucers from other planets?
There are electrified, unidentified, to me unidentified, flying objects. We have seen three, as we mentioned earlier on this program. And we were interested, and we felt that we were a very good observer inasmuch as we had already been building models and testing them out, electrical systems, by the time that we had seen had these first observations. Now, it's not up to me to conjecture whether or not they are from other planets, but the evidence so points. Because we certainly wouldn't appropriate $365 million to build one rocket to station it if we had such a system, which we propose to make possible. We have the system ourselves to make possible here, but if the system is already in operation, then surely something is very wrong that all of this money is spent on expendable rockets, $55 million is no cost at all to test out a rocket that may not get 2 feet off the ground.
So what do you think about the principle of, let's say, suppose there were certain things about this that did not pan out right under practical conditions? Is it possible to, let's say, rocketize the edges of these cones and have the thing spin by rocket propulsion?
We don't need it. We have a tremendous spin here. The electric motor operates identically the same way. You set up an electromotive force inside a magnetic field, and you immediately get rotation. So we actually have here an improved electrical motor, which in itself is a circular device. And we say that we have really put the wheel in the air and in another dimension.
Yes. We might be living through sort of a fantastic revelation in that we don't know. Maybe certain governments are actually experimenting and have such craft in the air, and we could sit here at this panel and talk about it quite idly. And to those in the know that are actually making these similar devices, they're maybe a little bit upset about the matter, and there's nothing much they can do about it, apparently. I remember well, prior to World War I, there was one article in Colliers. It was called U-235, I believe, and it was an explanation of the uranium atom. Now, during the war, one article written in good faith, nobody plotted anything or anything like that, there was an article called The Atom Gives Up, and this was published in the Saturday Evening Post. And it was, I don't know how it got through, there was no censorship that I know of at that time. It just happened that the writer of the article had submitted it to someone who knew nothing about the innermost secrets. The Manhattan Project was top secret, and so the thing was simply published, and that's all there was to it. So after the article came out, I suppose the FBI or those in charge stepped in, and they quietly got them out of the libraries, took as many as they could out of the second-hand magazine market, and they just sort of made the copies disappear as much as possible. Do any of you gentlemen happen to know about that?
I missed that.
Well, it is true that there wasn't much they could do. They just had to spirit these articles away. They didn't want to make too much of a fuss about the thing because of the fact that somebody might suspect something. So they had to do it quietly. Then, well, a matter of a few years later, boom, off went the atomic bomb. And to carry your analogy out to the ultimate, we like to demonstrate the fact that this Earth itself that we're riding on, spinning on its axis and orbiting around the sun, is literally a spacecraft demonstrating everything we're talking about here tonight. It is rotating and orbiting at a certain constant speed in a magnetic field, and it is literally a demonstration of a spacecraft. Would you say offhand that the Earth was in itself a magnet?
I would say it is, yes.
Mr. Tolkien, would you assume from the measurements you're able to make on Earth that the moon itself has a gravitational field?
Definitely.
And how would you account for the fact that it has a gravitational field and that it does not rotate on its axis?
It does not rotate on its axis.
No, the moon doesn't rotate on its axis. Oh, wait a minute.
Sure it does.
It's actually a rotation.
It's equivalent to one rotation is equivalent to one revolution.
Yes. Now, how long does it take?
28 days.
28 days. Now, the Earth takes 1 day. We would assume, therefore, that the Earth had 28 times as much power as the moon.
No, I wouldn't assume anything. All I know is that the moon rotates in 28 days, the Earth rotates in 1 day.
We have a light proportion law there. take the center of gravity of the Earth is from the center of the Earth. It's standing out. And that's why the engineers and scientists have so easily evaluated the velocity of the craft that we put in the air by the orbit of it predicated upon the pattern that has already been set up by the amount of time it takes the moon to rotate once around the Earth from the center of the Earth's core. This being 28 days, and the distance being 240,000 miles, it's so easy to evaluate the velocity of something 500 miles out, something 1,000 miles out, 2,000, until you get up to the moon, which makes it 28 days.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, Mr. Carr, but we're going to have to take care of a little business, and I don't know. One addressed to Ben Isquith, the l'enfant terrible from Siberia. Word zero comes from Italian zephyrium or zephyro. Leonard of Pisa wrote a book on Arabic system of numbers in 1202 the year. His word zero came from the Arabic cipher, S-I-F-R, or cipher, which is a translation of the Hindu sunya, meaning empty or void. Reserve space for me if the Baltimore trip is serving mint juleps, otherwise in such a minus atmosphere could not add or subtract a zero. Love from your constant listener, Olga Spofford Maranzano. Here's the one that seems to be a slight beat. C.V. Bauer asks Carr, what about Kehoe's magnetic field theory of propulsion? Impossibility flies tonight with a vengeance. We wish you luck from the moon. King Bauer and C.V. Did you care to comment on that, Mr. Carr?
No comment.
All right, fine. Next one?
The next one is Maxwell, the scientist, I assume, mathematically identified light wave with electromagnetic wave. First found them identical in velocity and property. Carr accepts the electromagnetic theory and denies fundamental light law. If light speed varies, does electromagnetic field vary? That's signed A. Osgood.
We were conjecturing about a system outside our own solar system. And this was conjectural. In our own solar system, our craft is built upon the measurements that we know, the velocity of light and electromagnetic waves.
A little question. I was curious about this thing, that these revolving cones seem to pass over, it's again hard to describe, they seem to pass over like intricately revolving magnetic, copper-wound coils, I should say. Do you supply any motive power to this?
All of the energy comes from these two cones. This, in the vernacular, would be a battery. The big novelty here is that we have put a battery in motion. We have designed it according to accepted knowledge of the total dimensions of space matter, and we have activated it electrochemically, and then we use this electrochemical activation to activate the entire craft, after which we have motion as the feature of this accumulator, which in the vernacular is a battery.
Ben Isquith. Mr. Carr, I wanted to ask you this. Mr. Osgood's telegram, I think, brought up a very important and perhaps even crucial point. Namely, it's quite true that James Clerk Maxwell demonstrated that light is electromagnetic radiation. Also, which was experimentally verified by Hertz, who actually laid the foundation for modern radio.
Now, the speed of an electromagnetic radiation, such as radio waves, is also 186,000 miles per second. In other words, light and all forms of electromagnetic radiation is constant at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. Now, it's presuming, if it were possible, for your craft to travel faster than the speed of light, it could therefore travel faster than the speed of electromagnetic radiation. So once it exceeded the speed of 186,000 miles per second, you wouldn't be gaining all this energy from the electromagnetic radiation that you're generating, and wouldn't you fall rapidly downward?
There's a continual falling in space, which in itself can bring velocity and also bring you to another system.
No, I was thinking about this trip 1,000 miles up.
Well, we qualified our answer there by stating that our craft was designed on the basic known principles of the velocity of light within our system and the electromagnetic wave velocity. Now, we mentioned conjecturally that in other systems there could be different velocities, but we are not applying them to our craft. We don't identify them with our craft.
Yeah, fine, but if you go faster than the speed of light...
We didn't... Well,
you said it was quite possible.
I said in another system.
All right, in any other system. Right? If you go into Altair 7, I mean, I don't care what system you use.
Very possible.
All right, say you're in Altair 7, and you're going faster than the speed of light. Now, if you're going faster than the speed of light, you're going faster than the speed of electromagnetic radiation. Therefore, you cannot absorb any energy from the electromagnetic motor that you're generating, because you're traveling faster than it's getting out.
Relatively, we would not be able to go faster than this unless we were in a system that permitted it. In our system, of our solar system, our craft, as we have mentioned now 3 times, is designed on known principles. We conjectured about other systems. If we go beyond the velocity of light in other systems, then the conditions within the system would make it possible for us to continue to have power.
Dave? Ben, you had gotten a little bit beyond where I was. You were going out at the speed of light and had already gotten to Altair 7. I'm still down here on Earth, and I'm not traveling very fast. Let's assume, Mr. Carr, that this vehicle, I presume you'd call it a vehicle, is at rest. What is it that originally overcomes the inertia of this rotor and starts the rotor to moving?
The electromagnetic force that was stored in the energy of the neutron electrical accumulator, which in the vernacular is a battery.
Now, the neutron accumulator is these cones that have apexes inverted to each other with the bases together.
That's true.
Now, I know of batteries such as the zinc-carbon battery with the sal ammoniac material in between them. I know of the mercury battery and various types of storage batteries, such as the nickel-cadmium cell and the lead sulfuric acid cell. Does this come within the scope of any of those?
Yes, it does, and we can use any of the principles that you mentioned. What we have here is tremendous size in comparison to other batteries. Therefore, an accumulation of cells, it's very easy to put 1,000 2-volt cells inside this one unit as we see it externally and have it function very well. In the plan of our 45-foot craft, we plan to have a 12,000-volt battery which will expend an electromotive force of 12,000 volts to energize the electromagnets and the capacitor plates, and the regenerative coils in turn will put back into the battery in this system the same amount of voltage going out until there is a breakdown of electrochemicals and then, of course, a wear out of your system. But it could last as long as our average storage battery in an automobile.
Then in order to start the rotor off originally, it would be necessary to cause a flow of electricity through one set of the coils.
That's true.
Is there any magnetic force in the other set of coils at this particular point?
They are individually operate by circuit breakers, and the first motion begins to start a repetition the same as we have in a motor that has, the opposite of a commutator, which is accumulation of contact points wherein each coil is energized as the current flows through this coil. Then this starts a motion, and then the repetition of this motion brings the whole motor into phase. In the same sense, our accumulator and the magnets become speeded up, and the circuits are made and broken as they rotate.
Now, when this is resting when the entire craft is resting on the ground, it seems to me that the outer portion would have a certain amount of resistance from friction provided by the supports resting on the ground, and that the rotor on the inside would be the only thing that would be able to turn. Is that correct?
You're seeing here a model that has a stand that is not a part of the model. The operation is in the smaller model. As we see it here, the power system, there is nothing that is not a part of the unit itself. Now, in our design for a spacecraft, this is the power package. Then we have a cabin, and we have a landing apparatus as a part of it. Now, this can be retractable, the same as in our present flight system.
Now, I have another thing that puzzles me a bit. There are a lot of things, actually, that puzzle me. But in this particular case, where the rotor, or the inner rotor, starts rotating in one direction and the outer rotor starts rotating in the other direction, where are the people?
The people are in the third compartment, and this doesn't rotate.
How is it suspended?
The design is rather simple, and it is incidentally for the saucer enthusiast, it's somewhat like what is known as the Adamski bell in general form, although our streamlining is much better. We have the cabin is the actual center of the craft, and the battery, this accumulator, is below the cabin, and then the electromagnets are the total outside part of the circular coil, this being the cabin here.
Do you believe in the Adamski craft, Mr. Carr? Do you think that George had a real experience?
We believe, after having studied the photographs, that it is a highly functional device. We know nothing about Mr. Adamski or his experiences. We do not know the authenticity, but we do know that such a craft, using our principle, could most assuredly become airborne.
Mr. Carr, there is something that still puzzles me about this. If this cabin or bell in which the crew is housed is located on top of this motivating mechanism, what keeps it from rotating in one direction or the other?
The shaft of the accumulator goes through the cabin, and there is a bearing. Now, just as this stays stationary when this is rotated, so will the cabin, because there are two rotating forces. You have the clockwise rotation of the accumulator, the capacitor plates, and the generated coils. You have a counterclockwise rotation of the entire circular area of the craft, which is the largest diameter parts, which house the electromagnet. Therefore, when you have rotation in one direction and counter rotation in the other, the cabin itself is like a bearing, like the center part. It's you might say, an accentuation of a shaft.
I guess so.
We've built the models, sir, and proved them. This is correct.
You built what models, sir?
We have built actual models, and
Of the spacecraft?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have.
Of the OTCX one?
Yes, we have built models of it.
And what could you accomplish with the models?
We have had 6 successful airborne flights electromagnetically and 1 escape flight. We used circuit breakers of various types, cut off power, and even simple fuses that burned and through a switch. We lost 1 craft.
What was the size of them, sir?
The largest model we built and the one we lost was 6 feet in diameter.
When was this, sir?
The date is... we prefer not to mention it due to our patent procedure. It was in the past, but we have patent procedure going on now, and there are certain things involved relating dates.
I was just wondering, Mr. Carr, and I sincerely hope you don't mind our frank line of questioning. I notice in this beautiful brochure that has been presented to me by the OTC Enterprises that you constantly talk about a Corotto gravity motor. Have I pronounced that correctly, sir?
Corotto. Yes.
Corotto.
Right.
Gravity motor. You mentioned that it's portable. It requires no fixed location or large building in which to function, and you also say a lot of other wonderful things about the possibility of this motor. Is it possible, Mr. Carr, that you are trying to sell people the idea of the value of this gravity motor, and you're sort of using the spacecraft idea as a bit of showmanship to merchandise something else?
They are 2 separate power packages. The spacecraft utilizes the electrical accumulator. The gravity motor uses the pressure energy of the inertial attractive forces. We have learned how to take this energy and key it to a work shaft and get work power, which we truly call free energy, because it is. We do not make any part of it. Now, in the rather vulgar vernacular sense, a few years ago, this would have been classified as perpetual motion. It is nothing of the sort. We get free energy in the same manner that stored up power in a hydroelectric dam will continue to furnish energy for this dam to this hydroelectric system, so long as there's a flow of pressure of water into the dam to maintain it. Now, we have learned that all masses that are smaller than the mass to which they're attracted exert energy. Even this ashtray here, if it weighs a pound, if it takes a pound of energy to lift it, then it is exerting a pound of energy. So we have been able to put this to work. We have a true gravity motor, and this is what it is. And its functional operation is to produce work power continuously without any dissipation of the energy that causes it to operate. And we have built models of this, and these models operate and function, and we are in patent procedure on them.
Ben this with?
Well, I was just going to ask, you also have working models of the gravity motor. So, since you answered that, Mr. Carr, I wonder, you in the brochure, and in with Mr. Colton has stated it tonight, you've offered the spacecraft to the government. Has there been, to various government agencies, have there been any takers?
Up to the moment, no, sir.
Has anyone been interested? I mean, I imagine that if I was a government official, God forbid, but if I was, and I had seen a demonstration of a working model, or someone said they could show me a working model of a spacecraft, I would be very interested in going down and see it. Has any government official been that interested?
We have had the government scientist in our workshop, and this scientist stated that the 5 questions that he asked us were satisfactorily answered, and that he was satisfied that our ship could become electrically airborne. This was the evaluation he gave us.
Did you show him a working model?
We showed him what you see here.
In other words, not a working model.
We did not show him an activated prototype, no.
Didn't he want to look at one?
I think a lot of people want to look at one, and they will soon get this opportunity. We're in the midst of patent procedure, and until this has been completed, we do not reveal everything.
But since that visit by the government scientists, you haven't heard anything?
Not a thing.
Are you free to tell us what agency he was from?
Mr. Colton, would you care to...
Well, I think I can...
Go ahead,
I have
John.
that information, don't I?
Yes, you do.
This is from the Department of Defense. I have a letter that Mr. Colton turned over to me a moment ago. It's, I can't see the rest of it here because it's stapled down. Let me see if I can get this thing. Tell me what's on this letter here.
While you're taking that apart, I'll tell you that the 2 items you
Well, you can tell
holding
me
there...
if you want. I mean, no, it's Department of the Army, offer of the Chief of Office, of the Chief of Research and Development of Washington, D.C. Now, as soon as I put this together again, these are from the files of OTC Enterprises of Baltimore. I'll read this. This letter is addressed to Mr. Otis T. Carr, President of OTC Enterprises Incorporated, Baltimore, Maryland, and it's dated 23rd day of December, 1957. Dear Mr. Carr, in reply to your letter of 16 December 1957, this office has considered the results of the visit on the above date and the discussions with you on 21 November 1957. The results of these conferences do not justify further interest by the Army in your proposal. Your interest in the Army is appreciated. Sincerely, John A. Ord, Colonel and the Chief of the Research Division Office, Chief of R&D. This is not quite clear to me, Mr. Carr. In Mr. Ord's first paragraph, he mentions about a visit. Did he visit your plant in Baltimore?
There were a group of government officials, including a scientist.
That came to your plant in Baltimore?
That is right.
Could you give us any idea of the size of your plant in Baltimore?
Well, this is really a field office. It's not a plant.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a workshop there. We maintain our offices for our corporate structure and so forth. They're all maintained, and all our records are in this field office.
Well, now, where are these model spacecrafts? Where are they built, sir?
We have built these in our own private laboratory in the past.
And where is that located?
The only workshop we have at the moment is at our present address. That's 2502 North Calvert Street, Baltimore, which is our field offices.
In other words, that is the OTC enterprise as of today.
That is right.
There's no plant, there's no research work that is going on except on the board.
You have seen the projection, the architect's preliminary plan.
Yes, we have.
Of the
Very
research
impressive.
institutes that we plan to build.
When do you plan to build it?
This is a matter of funds. Now, our $20 million offer for the delivery of a 45-foot circular foil spacecraft includes tooling, and tooling includes this total plant, as you saw in the preliminary architectural drawing.
WOR Radio, 710 on the dial in New York.
Cost will run close with all tooling and all furnishings around $10 million. And the other $10 million would be used in the fabrication and checking out, testing the circular foil craft.
I'm interested in a clipping that I have from the Buffalo, New York Courier Express dated December 21st, 1957. The article is headed, Army Rejects Offer to Build Spacecraft. I'm sorry, it's dated Washington, December 20th. It seems that a spokesman for the Army made this statement. The model shown does not meet present or foreseeable needs of the Army, and the Army has no further interest in the project as presented. Now, if you are correct, sir, in your claim that with this spacecraft, this OTC-X1 spacecraft, that if you had the opportunity to build it, that you can go to the moon in a period of 5 hours, it would seem to me that the Army or any branch of our armed services would certainly be greatly interested in this project.
Novel developments that are totally new have often been rejected, which has nothing to do with their value. I think that there isn't any question about the terrifying energy in the release of fissionable atomic power, but we do know that the first boys who knew how to do it properly even had their patent application turned down and had it rejected, and it was only, that is by the United States, it was only after one of them, Dr. Fermi, was awarded the Nobel Prize, was his patent even reconsidered. So that it is not unusual to find new and novel things which are far superior to what is accepted being rejected on all sides. This does not qualify the items, the actual, we feel, the demonstration of the models, the building of this principle and proving it will speak for itself. And this is not too far off. However, we do have the problem of the amount of funds were mentioned.
Mr. Carr, if you say that sometimes they're not interested in new ideas, why have they been so interested in attempting to launch so many unsuccessful satellites?
Apparently, the rocket enthusiasts are the ones who have control of this type of thinking of the moment. I don't know. To me, a rocket is a glorified Chinese firecracker. This principle has been known for well over 1,100 years. Newton gave the true evaluation then of how to properly use it, and then all of a sudden some scientists found out that the function of a rocket, the reaction principle, worked as well in a vacuum as it did in air resistance, and this rocket age of today was born. We think that it is as dead as a dodo already. We think that when our first craft is built, rockets become museum pieces.
When your first craft is built,
Right.
you don't feel that there'd be any need for a rocket?
We see no need whatever. To us, it's antiquated.
Do you think that any foreign governments may be familiar with the idea that you have in mind, your plan, sir?
We think that thousands of people all over the world understand this plan very well.
You think that thousands
We do.
of people understand the plan?
We think so, yes.
Ben Isquith?
What I was wondering about the fact that the Army and the Navy, if anything, have been pretty lavish with research funds concerning potential spacecraft and rocketry. I even remember reading about some kids in Iowa who were members of a high school rocket society who were shooting off their own rockets, and they got one up 200 feet or something, and they're supposed to have had some new gimmick, and they got a Navy research contract out of it. And if the Navy is willing to give a research contract to a bunch of high school boys and girls who are working in a rocket society, I don't understand why the Department of Defense is so blind to a spacecraft on an entirely new principle.
Pardon me. Do you want to comment on that?
Well,
Go right ahead.
we don't understand either. We haven't refused in the office.
Mr. Carr, we had a gentleman on this program recently, a man by the name of Reinhold O. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt lives someplace in California, and he claims that he had a rather unusual experience in Kearney, Nebraska, on the afternoon of November 5th, the year of 1957. He claims he was driving in his 1955 Buick, came to an empty piece of property on the outskirts of Kearney, Nebraska, and a rather strange craft was hovering over this empty piece of property. Eventually it landed. There were 6 occupants in the craft. He was invited in. 4 of them were men, 2 were women. They spoke in a high German. And I was wondering if you're familiar with that story, and if you have any opinion about Mr. Schmidt's story.
We only know what we read in the papers, and it's hard for us to express an opinion. We know that an electrified craft can become airborne. We have done it. We know that ours works. We have never seen one except in the air at high velocity.
And possibly the ones that you've seen are from other planets?
There's a great possibility, yes.
Or is it possible that their origin may be from some foreign country?
We question that any country which is still pursuing, and it seems to be that all countries are pursuing the missile program and the so-called intercontinental ballistic missile and so forth, if they had an electrified craft such as we know can be built, why are they proceeding the other way? They are doing now. We don't know this answer, and we therefore can only assume that what has been seen legitimately, and I don't say that any of these stories are not, because I don't know. I have no way of investigating them. But we do know that there are some very excellent observers who are scientists and who have seen electrified objects in the air. We know that the Alubeck lights have never been explained. And they were seen by scientists, and they were properly photographed, and they were certainly luminescent.
Mr. Carr, prior to the year, I think you did mention the first 15 to 20 minutes that we started our discussion this morning, that back in the year of 1937, that you had this idea of developing this unusual type of spacecraft, and that you incorporated, that is, OTC Enterprises was incorporated in the year of 1955. Between the years of 37 and 55, what was your source of livelihood, sir? Your source of income? Primarily the development of this?
No, we worked at other tasks in order to maintain ourselves. and spent all the funds that we could get our hands on to continue experiments. We maintained a laboratory in New York City, up around 63rd Street to Amsterdam Avenue, from 1938 to close to 1942, and we moved to Baltimore, and we opened up our small experimental workshop there and maintained it. All our time in Baltimore, we were a desk clerk at the Southern Hotel until we had completed our experiments.
You're using the editorial we again.
That's right.
You're not referring to Mr. Colton.
No, sir. No, I'm sorry. It's the editorial we. Myself. And to further answer the question, when we had met with complete success, we organized our corporation and started to lay the groundwork to start to build this first craft.
To go back to your question a while ago and the analogy we were building up with the Earth as a spaceship, taking another look at the mock-up prototype power package there in front of you, it resembles the solar system itself, and as a matter of fact, one of the statements in the brochure which Mr. Carr published back in October 1957, says we have translated the geometry of the universe, and in the sense that this device miniaturizes and essentially duplicates the motions of bodies in the solar system, is the source of its ability to also miniaturize their energies. So that in the sense that the bodies in the solar system in all time have maintained their constant motions, they are perpetually in those motions, and this is why sometimes people characterize this power package as a perpetual motion machine, while we do not make any such claim.
There was a fascinating book that appeared many years ago. I believe it was called The Descent of the Atom. It was an anonymously written book, and at first it appeared to be, I've been looking for this person, it appeared to have been written by a scientist who did not want to give his name, decided to go a little bit offbeat, and from left field published a private theory, which incidentally has been done.
I published it under my pen name of Tex Dumont Jr.
I was afraid of that. The point of the whole theory, I wouldn't encourage this boy. Don't encourage him. He's sick. According to this book, he figured it out this way. He figured, well, now look, the solar system is an atom. An atom of what? Looking at the planets, their numbers and so forth, he came to the conclusion that this large atom, solar system as an atom, must have been an atom of fluorine. This is no gag. And he felt that there were magnitudes involved, and he, I believe, stopped at something like the 11th magnitude. However, the book was not very scholarly, and in view of the newfound author, I can see why. It was not too good, actually. In other words, the conclusions the way he arrived at his conclusions indicated that he was not much of a scientist. Since then, a number of scientists have, however, speculated with the concept of the solar system as an atom or other solar systems as atoms, and have been inclined to reject it on somewhat more valid grounds than the original concept was held to be valid. That's all.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but this has been so interesting to me, and I sincerely hope to our 8 listeners that may I apologize in advance to say that I'm going to take care of a little business, and as they say in this business, I'm going to put them back to back.
We are so mixed up here with all the equipment that we have. We have miniature mock flying saucers, and I've got a tremendous cup of cold tea, and we've got all sorts of things around the table. And let me just tell you, maybe you just joined us.
You got $20 million? A lot of money? Yes, it is. That's a real classical buck, $20 million. But let me just tell you what you can get for $20 million. Of course, this is the delivered price of the OTC-X1 circular foil spacecraft. And that $20 million, well, that's payable in full on delivery. You know, none of these, type of bits where no down payment, so much a month or anything. You got to have it all at one time. So it's payable in full on delivery with no prior commitment required, and including all tooling and other overhead to you, $20 million. And if you've got a friend or a neighbor next door that would like to get one at the same time, we can make a special deal for you by tossing one extra one in for an extra $4 million. That means $24 million for the two of them. And of course, I'm talking about a spacecraft. I'm talking about a flying saucer. Now, this is not a gag. We're not kidding you this morning. We're really down to earth, and I'm squaring you off. But if you own one, you won't be down to earth very long, because when you get into that OTC-X1 circular foil spacecraft, you can go to the moon in 5 hours. No, I'm giving it to you straight this morning. This is just what we're being told by members of OTC Enterprises Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland. And if we had picture radio this morning, I can assure you we would have just about the most amazing thing to put on camera, because we have the plans in front of us, we have the models in front of us, and we have just about everything, including some very colorful and very beautiful brochures. And our guest, our Otis T. Carr, president of OTC Enterprises Incorporated, and Norman Evans Colton, director of sales engineering of OTC Enterprises. Now, OTC Enterprises Incorporated are willing to demonstrate that the OTC-X1 craft will depart from any specified location in the continental United States, orbit one or more times outside the Earth's atmosphere, and land its crew safely within the inner rotunda courtyard of the Pentagon building in Washington, or at any other location best suited to public observation. Now, when you hear that, I know a lot of people say, well, now, is John pulling our leg? No, we're not pulling your leg. We're telling you just what we have in front of us, all of these facts. You see, the OTC-X1 craft is to be of circular foil design, approximately 45 feet in diameter and 15 feet high at the center, and the crew compartment to accommodate at least 3 persons in atmospheric comfort and safety under the normal conditions to be anticipated in flight to within 1,000 miles away from the Earth. And the price? $20 million, additional identical units on the same schedule, $4 million, delivery, approximately 24 months at quoted prices, or in less time, subject to upward revision of price, to minimum of approximately 6 months. My other guests this morning, Mel Shaloney, Roy Benson, Ben Istwith, and Dave Bell. Mel Shaloney?
Mr. Carr, LJ has just finished reading a paragraph from one of the bulletins that you put out, quoting the price on the OXC1. I believe that's the correct...
OTCX1.
OTCX1, excuse me.
That's right.
He mentioned the price as being $20 million. I have in front of me an information bulletin number 3 dated December the 23rd, 1957, in which you are quoted as having offered, quote, to build and deliver to the government without 1 penny of risk to the American taxpayer said vehicle. Now, how do you mean to accomplish this in view of the fact that you're going to charge $20 million?
Our plans at this time were that this would be privately financed if we had the order.
Could you amplify on that?
We had contact with people who had agreed to privately finance us if we had the order.
And why hasn't the order been forthcoming?
Apparently, those whom we contacted in the Department of Defense were not interested in our proposal.
Have you contacted them recently?
Not recently, no.
Don't you think that it might be a good idea in view of the entire post-Sputnik atmosphere in Washington?
We are open for suggestions along this line, but most assuredly all the officials in Washington must know about us and our plans.
It occurs to me that if you sent a letter like this to the Russian embassy, you might get a reaction from them that, for some reasons, would not be forthcoming from our own government. Should this come about, the resultant publicity that you would be bound to get would certainly call attention to what you're trying to accomplish.
As Director of Public Relations and Sales Engineering for OTC Enterprises, I would like to say emphatically that we would not consider or contemplate any such action.
No, I didn't
I
mean
understand how you project it, but I don't want it to go out on the air without me making sure it's properly qualified.
Well, admittedly, my interest in this entire scheme that you're projecting, I use the word scheme for lack of a better one, without any connotations, is my interest in this is that it would seem to be the golden opportunity for the United States to be able to recapture the center of world attention with regard to scientific advancement. And assuming that the invention will do what the things, it'll do the things that are claimed for it.
We have great hopes. Excuse me.
This would be the paramount issue on getting the government to be interested enough, at least, to take a look at one of the thousands of working models that you've made.
We have great hopes that the new approaches to space exploration, such as the proposed space agency and the committee headed by Congressman McCormick, which is now studying all of the aspects of approaches to space exploration and the manufacture of devices to carry man into space, will provide the unity and singularity and impartiality of thought and approach to the whole subject that perhaps has not been practical under the setup of the conventional defense agencies whose interests have been apparently confined to rocketry and missiles and the uses of combustible chemical fuels of various kinds. We hope and we feel sure that Congressman McCormick's committee will explore every possibility relating to space exploration.
I have what at first glance might seem to be a very naive question. If thousands of working models have been built as director of promotion, wasn't it at all possible for you to see to it that at least one of these thousands were called to the attention of someone in government? Couldn't you walk into your congressman's office with this working model and say, look what I've got, let's see if you can use it?
It has been said by the philosophers that if you understand principle, you understand the machine. These principles, and as a matter of fact, the OTC X-1 spacecraft essentially has only two moving parts rotating on a single central axle or axis. Total disclosure demonstration premature to our total security of self-determination and our opportunity to manufacture and design prototypes for application to many purposes would be somewhat jeopardized by premature disclosure.
You referring to government with
excuse me, Ben. You quote the philosopher that the principle is easier to put forward than the... What was that quote again?
Well, I'll give it to you by a more familiar analogy. That if you've never seen a wheel, it would take only one look at a wheel and you could manufacture wheels.
Well, the native philosopher says, I'm from Missouri, show me. And it appears to me that that's the easiest way. And I'm going to anticipate Ben's question. You're assuming that the government would steal the invention without giving you due credit, as I understand your statement.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't even subscribe to it. I would say that we want to make sure of our self-determination before we make total disclosure demonstrations in private or in public. However, as I said earlier in the program, if anyone were willing to write out an order for a full-scale craft, before we would pick up the order and begin to perform on it, we would be willing to manufacture and demonstrate a miniature prototype model that would prove beyond any doubt our ability to manufacture the full-scale craft.
We're talking this morning with O.C. Carr, president of OTC Enterprises Incorporated, and Norman Evans Colton, director of sales engineering. Ben Isquith is with us, Roy Benson, and Mel Chiloni. Do you want to read that telegram, Ben, please?
Yes. It's from our friend A. Osgood again. Ben, refer gentlemen to Norbert Wiener communications theory. 3 hours questions minus 0 answers. My field, thermo and high velocity research. If car correct, I burn lab Monday a.m. P.S. Dr. Zacharias, also MIT, should be mildly disturbed. Signed A. Osgood.
I have a match.
Any comment there, Scott?
No comment.
All right, fair enough. Mel?
Yes, I have a number of questions. Getting back...
Don't forget, gentlemen, if I may interrupt again just briefly, we want to get into the photon gun, too, after a little while.
Photon.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Ben. I'm very happy that you are here with us this morning because it's these little corrections that help to build me to be a bigger and a better Roy Benson.
That's like humidity.
It's humidity. And so many people mispronounce that. It's humidity. That's a Mantler pronunciation, if I'm not mistaken.
It comes from the Atlantic States region.
Atlantic. Some people pronounce it Atlantic. It's Atlantic.
Well, Mr. Colton, it seems to me that you don't have a very high opinion of the governmental policies that are now in force, because in one of your information bulletins, number 2, dated November 28, 1957, you extend an open hand to industry and offer them, let me see if I could find the quote here. I had it here a minute ago. At any rate, you offer them the opportunity to view the devices that you have in your laboratory and for them to mention their requirements in various industries, and yet you deny first-hand witness of what has been accomplished in the laboratories to the United States government.
I'm sorry that the announcement that you're reading from seems to create that impression. That is not the fact. You see, this Neutron electrical accumulator has has many applications, has many forms, many variations. There are applications to many industrial uses. In one sense, you might describe it as an energized armature, or in other words, a motor with a self-contained moving battery, also capable of continuously re-energizing itself. The offer that stands in regard to the spacecraft applies to government and industry alike. We will only make total disclosure demonstration after we have secured a firm order. In other words, we're not looking for anyone to evaluate our developments. Mr. Carr has spent 20 years in this research. He doesn't need any risk money, either from the taxpayers or from industry, for further exploration and development. He is willing to show to anyone who is a sincere prospective purchaser, but not just to anyone who comes along out of curiosity.
Well, Mr. Colton, I, for the sake of argument, will go along with the premise that government, by its very nature, would be slow-moving and not at all receptive to new devices that would displace a lot of manpower and a lot of budgetary expenditures that have gone on in the past. However, I fail to see where some corporation like General Motors would not come to you and say, gentlemen, I'd like to see what you have. I'd like to see as much as you'll show me. I'm prepared to follow through on this, if only, I interject parenthetically, to buy up certain patents if there are such in existence, or in any way to secure rights and privileges that would prevent a competitor getting their hands on something that is able to furnish power for automobiles.
No OTC product or patent will ever be available on any such basis. This is the reason for our concern to have complete self-determination, so that this new energy system can be made available equally to all people everywhere.
Let me put it to you this way. Has any representative of any automobile manufacturing corporation in the United States seen fit to communicate with you regarding this series of inventions?
We've had a great many communications. We have not yet had any direct, formal, official
after 18
negotiation.
Years, after 18 years, what do you attribute this flaw to?
This is like the when did you stop beating your wife? I have to accept your adjective, floss. I won't use it myself. I will say that throughout the development of technology in this country and some others, there has been a tendency to maintain the status quo, to carry out existing production by existing means as long as there are willing markets. I noticed the other day in a magazine advertisement by a metals manufacturer an illustration of a gas turbine engine, which is predicted to be the motive power for the automobile of the near future. This gas turbine engine, similarly to the principles of electromagnetic propulsion, which Mr. Carr has perfected, have been known in principle, in practice, and in prototype for many years. Your automobile is still powered by an internal combustion engine, and I am not qualified to tell you why.
Mr. Colton, what does Utron mean?
Utron is a coined word. It's a word Mr. Carr put together from the letter U and Tron. U meaning the direction or shape of motion as applied and used and equated in this accumulator or this battery that we described.
U represents the direction?
U is the plain geometrical figure that is a portrait of the wave, you might say.
How do you square the use of plane geometry with the concept
Well,
you
because
have
the
involving... No, you with the concept you have involving the fourth dimension.
I say that the letter U, as described on paper, is a two-dimensional and therefore plane figure, which is a portrait on paper of the wave, or the wave motion, which is put to use to produce straight-line pressure energies in the neutron accumulator.
Now, I don't know what you said. I mean, could you break it down for me?
In answering for Mr. Colton, because it is more or less my development, to me, there is no such thing as a completed curve. It only goes halfway. It's like you only go halfway in the woods and then you're coming out. And this is the same. The bisection of any total sphere is its exact center, and one half of it is primarily U-shaped. Because in magnets there are always two poles, and naturally one of the normal ways to show them is in a U-shape. But if it's in a bar magnet, there are still two poles, and the shape is still the same. We can only put a rope halfway around the tree, and it is coming around the other way. And this is true in all wave motion. Now, if you extend this into...
Excuse me, what is true in all wave motion?
If you extend this into velocity, you get the force fifth. And this is patterned by the sine wave and definitely the electromagnetic wave.
I see what you mean. The apex and the cusp of the wave.
This is true.
All motion is relative to all other motion, and so it performs this serpentine spiral shape in completing its cycle.
Well, it's not performing that motion. That motion is the graph of an equation representing the motion.
But the form...
But I'll accept the fact that you call it a neutron.
Yes,
that's how you got it.
And also, this form in its dimensions is well exemplified in the geometry of our accumulator.
Why do you refer the space vehicle as a fourth-dimensional space vehicle?
Because the geometry of this accumulator is definitely fourth-dimensional.
How? I hate to ask these one-word questions, but I'm stuck with them.
To me, the application of space and time in a vibratory field. And electricity, as we know it, as being a vibratory force in motion, this is symbolic of it, and when it is activated, it becomes such. Now, this may be a little bit difficult to understand, but nevertheless, the very smallest electronic particles of matter have been shown under the highest type of electron microscopes to be in one-dimension square.
Electrons?
Yes. They have been the smallest particles.
No one's ever seen an electron under...
The electron particles have been so photographed, the smallest particles of matter. This has only come out of the laboratory recently. But if this was dimensional, they would be definitely conical and almost identical in shape with our accumulator.
Excuse me, Mallory. I may have heard wrong, Mr. Carr. You said electrons were photographed by the electron microscope.
The particles, the smallest particles of matter, naturally...
do you mean electrons?
Not necessarily, not exactly electrons, no, but the smallest particles of matter that they've been able to photograph have come up square.
How does that relate to the fact that your vehicle is a four-dimensional vehicle?
Because this, to me, this photograph is verification from this atomic laboratory that this is truly a space dimension because it is the shape of matter. So without matter, you couldn't have space. They're synonymous.
You got a telegram. May I read it? Well, it's a good one.
It's a good question.
Translate it for us?
Please comment type of sound projected by this craft. William Woodward.
There would be very little sound at any distance from it. In the close proximity, it would have the hum of a high-voltage motor.
Sort of a whirring sound?
This is
humming
right.
sound?
That's right.
I see. Well, is it that you can't exactly divulge the essential principle of this because of the patent situation?
Almost all of the essential principles have been discussed here this evening.
Well, it does seem vague to me. Now, I admit stupidity about the thing, actually. But this is the thing, the central unit, the core.
I think you should describe it to him.
I'm holding a thing that looked like two... the only thing I can think of are two loudspeakers placed mouth to mouth in a simplified form.
Well, that's
two
one
cones mouth to mouth.
I think we could also describe it as two tops. In other words, like
Excellent.
tops
Two tops.
joined together so that we have a point on each end.
That's right. That's right. And actually, it's like a thickened flying saucer. Higher flying saucer. Comes to a point at the top. Now, what is it that comes from this? Is it a high voltage, or is it that you feel that you shouldn't go into that too deep?
The voltage is whatever we wish to make it by design.
In other words, this is a battery, sir?
That's right.
The battery then goes through these magnets?
The battery rotates in this magnetic field. The average armature today in any electrical system is usually permeability iron wound with copper. Then, in a magnetic field, either this is a motor or it becomes a generator, depending upon the need or use. The great novelty here is that in the area in which an armature is normally used, we have a power unit, which is a battery, and this is a moving power unit.
In other words, you might call this a self-contained power supply. Is that right?
That is right.
Now, if it's a self-contained power supply, such as, let's say, an AC line with a transformer or something, this is part of a power supply. It is a power supply, in fact.
Right.
How would this, let's say, generator, or if you want to call it, maybe I'm using the wrong word, how would this emanator, how would this gather additional energy from outside?
This is due to its circular motion. The electrical forces are always in motion, and when they manifest. Now, we have cycles on alternating current AC. It's usually 60 cycles a second, 3,600 minutes. So we have discovered in our experiments that there is a space cycle related to electricity. And if we join this cycle, we get energy from it.
Get back for a second to the physical description of the neutron accumulator. I think I can help give your listening audience at home a graphic picture of what it is we're looking at.
Is this what you call the neutron?
Yes, this is the neutron electrical accumulator.
Double-pointed top?
Double-pointed top. If you have a pencil handy and you will draw a square on the paper.
In just one moment, please.
This is WOR Radio, your station in New York, 710 on the dial.
Yes. I would suggest for all of our listeners to get a pencil and paper. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to possibly walk around the house and search for that paper and pencil, and then we'll have Mr. Colton
described the shape of this, and I think with this idea that he has in mind that everybody will have an actual drawing right in their own home this morning, and they'll know just what the shape of the Unitron is. My guest this morning, Otis T. Carr, President of OTC Enterprises Incorporated of Baltimore, Norman Evans Colton, Director of Sales Engineering, Mel Trelawney, Advertising Executive, is with us, Ben Iskowitz, the Cybernetician, Roy Benson, Mechanic, and Dave Bell. I think you want to take over this point. Is that right, Mel?
Yes. I'd like to ask another naive question. Why is it that a patent has not been taken out on these inventions? I address this to either Mr. Carr or Mr. Cole.
May I hear the question again, sir?
Why is it that a patent has not been taken out on these inventions?
Applications are on file, or
Then
in
they
the
would.
processes of being on file. All of this is in the hands of our attorney. Our plan of introducing this called for various stages of development work and completion of such work before we started to proceed to make public, which in this instance means to patent. The definition of patent is to make public, and in this instance we are now proceeding along this line. But it was necessary, according to our plans, to have this as one of the final stages rather than the beginning.
A few moments ago, Mr. Colton was in the process of making public the design, at least on the outside.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We want to do that. One quick question, and then I hope that everybody has the pencil and paper ready. I'd like to ask you one additional question, Mr. Carr. You say you were incorporated in 1955. That is OTC Enterprises, right, sir?
That's right.
Have you at any time, since the start of it, since 1955, have you at any time made any effort to sell stock publicly?
We have not made any public offering of stock.
Never have?
No, sir.
Private offerings, sir?
We do not care to discuss the stock situation. We are not here to interest people in stock, and we are in the processes of setting up the machinery that will make it possible for a public offering. But during this stage, we do not care to discuss it in any manner.
What month in the year of 1955 were you incorporated, sir?
I believe November, sir.
November. So it's approximately 2.5 years has lapsed since the time that you formed the corporation.
That's right.
Well, what was the reason for forming the corporation, sir?
To do business under a corporate structure. There's very many reasons for this.
I'm familiar with some of them, too.
Yes,
Would
sir.
you tell me some of the reasons that you incorporated?
In this particular instance, all of my trademark, copyright, and patent rights have been assigned to the corporation, OTC Enterprises, which is a holding company, owning outright the rights of these various developments of mine.
But in other words, the name OTC Enterprises was of no value in 1955. So if the corporation had this as an asset, they had nothing at that time. Isn't that right, sir?
That's right.
As far as OTC Enterprises. Today, this possibly is a very important name in your particular field. The next question, Mr. Carr. If you set up a corporation and the corporation has as an asset OTC Enterprises and things like that, and also some plans, if the plans are not patented, what protection or what actual asset does the corporation have?
The corporation has the assets of assignment, of trademarks,
The trademarks you
of
can't do too
copyright.
much unless they're of some value, sir. Is that true?
And the trademark Kuroda is becoming of value because it's a matter of public knowledge, and so is Utron.
Valuable in what way, sir?
Well, because of identification.
In other words, supposing that you decided to get out of this business, sir. In other words, or if the stockholders decided to dissolve the corporation, would the name Utron, that trademark, would it be of any value, sir? Would it be a saleable?
We think it would be, yes, sir.
For what?
For identification in goods such as we plan to merchandise.
Well, in other words, if I don't have the patent, if I don't have the knowledge of how to build a Utron, if there is such a thing as a Utron, what could I do with the name? And I'm not trying to be facetious. I can't make a toothpaste and call it Utron toothpaste.
The names have a bearing upon these devices. Now, the devices are in the processes of being patented, and the applications. So the corporation owns these. It also owns our identification of these various things as plans, and it will own this research institute, which we plan to build, so it can expand as a corporate structure. We plan to license our development to other producing manufacturers.
Or in other words, you will not be manufacturing?
No, we do not plan to manufacture. Ours is
what would you do with
and development.
Very interesting. What would you do with all of the buildings, sir, that we've had the pleasure of seeing those architect drawings of them?
They are completely for research. This we call the Space Research and Free Energy Institute, and here we will explore all of the uses of the Utron electrical accumulator from hearing aids to spacecraft. It can be used to power a wristwatch, or it can be used to power a spacecraft. And in these applications, we hope to come up with perfection of design and perfection of prototype models, and then license the same to producing manufacturers.
Was one of the reasons for not having, for making application for a patent prior to the present time, was this due to a lack of funds, sir?
No, sir. It was, our planning was this way, and it is proving to be successful.
What manifestation of success has been seen?
Well, we have identification, we are known, we have received very favorable publicity. We feel we're receiving some tonight. I know that if we tried to buy it, we couldn't. Nevertheless, we're getting it. All of this has a tangible value because it is identification and expanding our identity to a larger and larger audience.
Mr. Colton, would you care now to try to work this out with our listeners? I sincerely hope that they all have a pencil and paper, and possibly you can describe to them how they can draw at home a facsimile of the Utron.
Yes, you can have a very good picture of what it is we're speaking of when we use the term Utron electrical accumulator. You take your pencil and draw 4 lines to form an open square on paper. When you have your square, you shall draw a straight line from one point of the square to an opposite point, and you will have 2 right-angled triangles. Now, if you'll convert the line you've just drawn into a small ellipse, you'll begin to see the appearance of 2 inverted cones, the base of which form a circular equator. So while you started with a square, you now have 2 cones. Obviously, the base of the cone is a circle or completely round as we describe it. And you have the device which we have described as completely round and completely square, the neutron electrical accumulator. To carry this out farther, if you like, to see it as the central motivating power core of a circular foil craft, which is most often described as a flying saucer, put one point of this square in a shallow saucer that you can draw just below it, invert another saucer over it at the top, over the opposite point, and you will see the approximate complete shape of the first prototype OTP circular foil craft.
Where would the cabin be in this?
The cabin would be the equivalent of a cup inverted on the top saucer.
There is a model of the saucer on the table in front of you. Could you point out where the cabin would be? Is the cabin on this?
The cabin is not on this. This is a cardboard mock-up to show the principle of counter-rotation of the outer ring, which contains the magnetic field of the energized horseshoe magnet, and the inner rotating neutron electrical accumulator. Roy Benson is holding up one of the wooden mock-ups of the neutron accumulator, which he has taken apart. He has separated the two cones in half and is questioning the appearance of the cavity in the center of each, which is a hemisphere. When the two cones are put together, you have a hollow sphere. This is the cavity that contains the electrolyte, which would be used in some of the applications of the accumulator, so that we have basically the well-known application of dissimilars in the presence of an electrolyte to produce what is known as the galvanic action or the generation of an electromotive force.
Of what value is the term completely round and completely square apart from its obvious redundancy?
Your questions multiply within themselves, so I'll take it as you gave it. It is completely round and completely square, as Mr. Carr said before, because it is his definition of the geometry of the basic space form, or the basic form of the shell of all matter, large or small, relatively, as we describe it.
When you say you're referring to
our literature.
To your literature.
It is, of course, entirely Mr. Carr's development from his discernment of the motions of natural bodies and natural universal energies. It is the definition of the terminal motions of universal energies in what we call space.
It appears to me that the concept of space has been put forth a good deal differently by such men whom you quote as Einstein. His concept of space does not at all jive with what you say as far as square and round.
May I interrupt to state that with his greatness, none of which of us would certainly want to impugn upon, he did not invent a spacecraft. We have.
It was a mathematician.
That remains to be seen, by the way, because while I have profound respect for the amount of work that has been done, I must remain a skeptic because I haven't seen this. I have seen mock-ups, and I've seen models, and I've heard very complicated theory, none of which I understood, and I would need a little bit more to assume that such a craft has already been built. Especially in view of the fact that some of the promotional material that I have before me mentions that you have built thousands of working models, and earlier in the program, as I recall, the figure 6 was mentioned.
There must be some misunderstanding here. We have made thousands of experiments which were made with models. Success was not always there. We have achieved success in 6 experiments.
I see. Well, I will find this quote from the material that I mentioned. I don't have it in front of me, but it specifically mentions that you have built thousands of working models.
Thousands of animated models would be a better term. I don't know where your quotes come from, but we've consistently said that Mr. Carr has made thousands of models, but he has consistently said that he has made only 6 models which have achieved
in fairness to you, I have found the source. It comes from an AP dispatch, and it says he has built thousands of working models. This is a quote of a quote, which may not be very accurate. It's a meta quote. A meta quote.
I would say that Van Isquith on your left has added a confidence to his respect, because I believe I saw him write out a check for $20 million a few minutes ago.
The model boy made it anonymous, too.
I don't see the check right now.
You get $20 million. I'll split with you.
Look, there's something here that I couldn't help notice, and that was a reference in a very elaborate folder that you have. Certainly a thing in order for profound congratulations. It's beautifully gotten up from an artistic point of view. It makes me think that it's the kind of a thing that you might expect to see from International Business Machines or something, something that they might hand out a deluxe edition showing their various models. Now, in it, you make mention of a photon gun, and you say, quote, "This is primarily a development for use outside the Earth's atmosphere. We are entering an age of space flight, and the use of solar energy is practically unlimited." Okay, fine. But we have not gotten outside the Earth's atmosphere, so what good would a photon gun be at this time?
As soon as we build our craft, we will use such, now incidentally, in using this word gun, we're using it as a reaction principle rather than as a weapon. This is, probably should not have been so stated there, but nevertheless it is a gun, and the fact that by bending rays of solar energy at right angles to their reception and placing them through a certain chamber, we have been able to get a reaction. And wherever there is a reaction, we can get power, we can get force from it. So that we feel that outside the atmosphere, new systems of propulsion, even beyond our own of electromagnetic, will make itself apparent.
Back with you again tonight at midnight, and I sincerely hope that you'll be with us and you might tell some of your friends and neighbors about the party line. We're around from midnight to 5:30, 6 mornings during the week. Monday mornings we get started at 1 right after Gene Shepard, and we continue